Hi, I'm Nathaniel Westphere, and you might know me from my FX PhD class from Beauty Work and Nuke 310, the dark art of digital video work. I'm going to take you through a quick class on how to do essentially the same paint work in Fusion, and Fusion has a great paint engine. Through this short class, we will discover how to use it, different techniques of beauty work, and how to quickly dive into the paint out skills you need to get the job done. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So we dragged and dropped our footage in, and if we click on it, we can see the loader node, and it's only 45 frames. And so we're gonna click and drag this footage, this node into the viewport, and we're just gonna select one viewport because that's all we're really interested in using right now. Now, for our first technique, we're going to use a transform node. And you might ask, what does a transform node have anything to do with beauty, especially alone? But we'll just see. So we're going to hit Control and Space and type in transform. Now we're going to hit Enter, and since the node was selected, it automatically connected it to us. So let's deconnect it by grabbing the front end. See, if I grab this end, it won't do anything. So let's take this end, grab it out, Alt-click this little red box, and we're going to see a menu here when we do that. And that's useful because these aren't really labeled. You have no idea really, other than symbolic representation, what they do. So we're going to put input, we're going to drag the transform node into the viewport. We hit Control Space again, and we're typing poly. And that automatically assumed we wanted to use it as a mask. But again, if you want to alt-click and drag it and put it into the effects mask, we are now going to use it as a mask. Now, if we look at the polygon node, we see it doesn't really create an image, and that's because we don't have a shape in there yet. So right now I'm clicked on it, but if I zoom in, I'm more likely to start making a shape. So just remember to click off it, and or use the middle mouse button and left mouse button to zoom in and out like this. And also you can do it down here. Pretty handy. So we're gonna click it again, and we get our this little menu on the side. But we want to just click off it, click on it again, zoom into the level we want. And now we're just going to start click around this little divot here. And so we have a really hard linear Bezier linear spline. But we don't really want that. So we're going to click drag, and finish the shape there. Now, even if you made a linear spline, you can always fix it, and you can always smooth any spline out by hitting Shift-S and smoothing it out. Now, some secrets to this, and some very useful hotkeys I recommend you memorize, is the S key, which will scale it, the X key, which will scale in the X-axis, the Y key that will scale in the Y-axis, the T key that will twist, and depending on where you click. So that's useful. And another thing is when we make a double polygon, which you always will typically if you want to feather this, because if we look at this, so let's go back to transform, or we can look at the shape itself. The polygon overlays will be rendered until we click off it. Useful. So we're gonna hit the D key, and we see green and red there. Well, if we hold down the O key and pull out, the red is the feather that now softens our shape. So we're gonna now animate through this shape, and down here we can see we have right click for shape animation and right click through for feather animation. That's important. But I'm going to backtrack real quickly because I didn't talk about this little guy down here. What is this guy doing here? It's a little XY coordinate. Well, it moves a shape around. But every polygon has two levels of animation. One that is a general offset in the center here, and one is vertex animation. We want to generally preserve the center animation for tracking information or rough positioning information to help out vertex animation. This is always something that will assist vertex information, but we don't want to necessarily use it and right off the bat. You can see here that it's way down here, and that's not really useful, especially if we're zoomed in right here. So we're going to use the M key right here to click and drag, and we can see we can move this away. And move it away just like that. But now we're going to just animate it. So we're going to right click for animation, and we can set key and make sure that's on. And use the bracket keys. So the left and right bracket keys, they're the keys right next to the P key, if you look on your keyboard. And we can just go through the sequence. Now, this is tiny down here. What are we going to do? What are we doing? Well, because we're defaulted to frames. And now we can see we have a timeline that scales much more appropriately to what we're looking at. So now we're going to click, and we're just going to scrub through this, and we're going to just kind of, I just went too far off the timeline. And we can hold it down and play, and then we can frame through. And we can grab this and we see we have a little keyframe there on 11 frames. And we see we are animating quite nicely. And now we see the shape move down there. Yeah, I just clicked off that. So if we have this plus key, you're modifying this shape. And we really have a shape that we want to not modify. So we're going to click that. And now we're going to animate this. And we're going to watch it through the sequence. Okay, so it starts to decay there. So we're just going to... And we're just going to trust interpolation to do most of the work for us. So we're going to move this here. And we see that it's animating over there. And end the sequence. Let's finish it off. So we have, you just need to come in there and tighten that up just a tiny bit. But we have an animation. Now let's say you want to delete a spline. Oh, delete a keyframe. So we see our polygon right there. And I clicked on spline by accident, but let's go back to the timeline view. And we see our keyframes right here. Now we can slide them in any way we want. And we can feather keys independently from the core mask key, or we can delete them and just animate and modify to what we see fit. Now, skin on skin is pretty forgiving, so you don't need to do this super tight. You would want to do it a little tighter than I did for this example here. So what we're going back to the transform tool, and you're going to tell me we still haven't done anything to remove this at all. We've made a nice spline, we've connected a few nodes, but what are we doing here? So when we look at this, we can move this around just like we did for the polygon tool. But if we hold down the M key, it's not going to shift for us. And that's a problem because we want to be looking at this while we move it. So in any value that is unscrubbable in Fusion, you can right click it, modify with XY path. And we go to the modifier tab where the modifiers will exist, and we see we have some scrubber tools here now. Now they do by default come animated, so you want to be careful about that, but we can just slide these now to make little adjustments. And we can go back to the polygon tool, and remember we're still looking at the transform tool rendered in the viewport. But we're gonna just slide off the opacity, and we're gonna see what is the necessary adjustments we're gonna need to make for this shape. So maybe we need to make this shape feathered more. But as we do so, you can see now that we have an animated shape that blends out exactly what we need to remove this in. And if you want to turn off the overlays, just click off it. And you can drag and move up there to your heart's content to see what's going on before and after, which is pretty useful. So that's making a Bezier shape, but we're going to move on to one of my favorite ways to do beauty work, which is through paint and clone tools. Something very similar to Photoshop, but we're going to do it in Fusion, and we're going to learn how to do vector paint animation for these paint strokes, which is essential to making it work. If a program doesn't let you affect and animate the vector points, it's no good for beauty work. You might as well be cleaning up a still frame. So we're gonna go and we're gonna hit Control Space again, and we're gonna click Paint. Again, I connected it to, we had this node selected, and so it automatically connected it for us. And you can see when we click on it, we get this little toolbar right here that has many different options. And we have our paint node interface right here with stroke controls. Now what we want, we have multi-stroke, clone, multi-stroke, and stroke. I prefer stroke, and for good reason. Let's just do this. And when we make a paint stroke, it gets placed into the modifier tab. Now when we're creating it, it's going to create a phantom entry for the stroke that you're about to create. So it's always going to make an extra one. And when we click off it, stroke 3 doesn't really exist anymore. Now we might have made an accidental stroke up here. We just hit the delete key. Now to select it, to make any stroke visible, we just click on it. And we can grab, and we can click on drag here. But hold on fast enough. We're going to find out why this is my favorite paint stroke, because this little option right here, make editable, and all of a sudden we have vector points, and not just vector points, but vector points we can animate. So we can grab points, we can animate it, and we can do what we need to clone out and animate brush strokes. Clone out and animate brush strokes. Now the same principles of any spline apply to these. And if you ever just click on it, it's kind of hard to click on this again. Just click up here on the stroke 2. And you can smooth it out just like that. And we have a handy little tool here called will reduce the knots for us. So let's simplify our shape down to there. And we can always hand animate and hand remove these knots down here. Now this really isn't something, unless we want to squiggle a line over someone's face, this really isn't something we want to have. So let's just delete it. And we're going to take a look, and let's say, hey, we have a client that wants, a little under eye touch up right there. And who doesn't? It's pretty much most of what anyone will ever request of you, because we don't get enough sleep these days. So we're going to click on stroke, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you. Now let's, if we go down to regular multi-stroke, and we go back to just making a fill, a color. We go stroke controls, but where does it make editable? We can, we have all the same choices when we have all the same choices when it comes to it, but really what's going on? Well, it's just because these are inherently different from the regular stroke. So we're just remember to hit the stroke, and we're gonna attack these under eyes under here with it. So we're gonna alt click, and you can see that's where the X goes. We're gonna control drag for size, and we're gonna try to get a little bit of skin underneath it. Sometimes, based on lighting, it can be a little tough. Go over. I see we have a stroke right there we don't want. And we're going to click here, and we're going to make editable. And now it's such a straight line that we won't reduce much when we do reduce points there. So we're just going to come in here and remove the on extra points, and we'll want to try to keep 3 points. Or 2 points if necessary, if you want. These are when hit Shift S, these are Beziers. So unlike Nuke, where it's all constantly kind of weird and it's not linear, but you don't have access to the handles. But at 3 shapes 3 points is a lot more stable. So we're gonna come in here. We're gonna blend that out. And we're going to right click for animation. Now it turns green. We're going to use the bracket keys. And we're just going to paint out and move up over the skin under here to blend out the dark areas. And just put skin on skin to solve our issues. Now, if we don't want to see it, we click back into the flow graph. If we want to see before and after, we can see a meaty result. It gets a little darker in this corner, so we want to control the offset. We're going to do a modify XY path. So when we create the XY modifier, we're going to modify, we're going to show that again. You see this little red dot down there up here, and that is going to help you move things around. It's pretty useful. And you can animate, just like that. Pretty useful. And you do have to remember, you are making keyframes there. Because it is animated by default. So, if you want animated source, I wouldn't recommend it. It's something that it's very difficult to pull off, but sometimes it is necessary to get a shot right. But try to do it without animating the offset point. So we went through this entire thing without learning about how we would apply tracking to your Bezier spline or your paint stroke. But both are very possible in this program, and we're going to go over that now. So without further ado, we're going to hit Control Space, and we're going to type in tracking. And already the tracker's attached, but if we alt-click drag, input, drag the tracker into the viewer. Now we see right here where this pops up. This is our tracker. This is tracker number 1. We can resize it just like any old tracker, and we can edit search region for it. But the thing is, we can't grab this tracker unless we grab this little corner right there. Like it or hate it, that's just the way it is. I am indifferent. I used to hate it. We're going to set our region a little different because it is defaulted to a very large range, and we're not going to start in the very beginning for that because we're going to illustrate something right here. This tracker is a little bit different than most. That's not to say it has features that other trackers don't. It really doesn't. But it searches in a way that is different from There is a way to search from the very first frame, and there's a way to track forward. And most every time you're going to want to track forward. I'm not sure of a reason you would want to do it otherwise, but just to show you, I clicked the track frame forward before, and now if we click this one, it jumps all the way back to the beginning and tracked it. If you suddenly move something there and it had something set up on the first frame, I would understand. Otherwise, I don't know why it's this way. And it is the exact same thing for the other side. Now, that might have been good because we tracked it to the end. And if we wanted to actually follow it down to the end and then redo and bring it back to the other side, that might have a reason. Let's just inspect this track, and it looks like it's sitting pretty well. All keyframes are baked into the timeline, and we can find them as displacement values between 0 and 1 in the spline editor. And Fusion uses XY coordinates, but also uses displacement values for transformation. That's one thing that makes it that's one thing that makes it unique. So we have our track animation, and let's say we would want to attach it to a polygon. As before, we're going to go back to this famous spot on the forehead because it just stands out to me so much. And we're just going to, finesse it a little bit. Select all points. Shift S. And we're going to right click on to connect. And connect to tracker path position. And already it's gonna jump it back to the point here. And that's just something you kind of have to live with. You can do connect to tracker steady position, but that's not really following it. You can connect to tracker unsteady position. And that will follow a little bit more. So we have our tracker here, and let's attach it to Bezier's polygon. So we're gonna bring up our polygon node, and for giggles, let's just make a transform, and but let's actually get into this. So let's connect effects mask. Let's go in here and grab this point because it just always stands out so prominently to me. And we have our polygon. Now it's not doing anything, and we wanted to connect to tracking. So we're gonna right click on the center. We're gonna go connect to unsteady position, and we have now connected to our tracking information. It's this little area right here moves slightly different than what you might find, especially in rotation, as it's rotating at an axis that's not really, the center is down here, so it's going to move away from it there. The other way is to connect it to position, but then it jumps way over there. It will get away from you up there. So if you connect it to modify, we'll go connect tracker steady position. It's trying to get away from you. If you connect it to tracker steady axis, it jumps way up there again. And doesn't seem all that useful to us. So modify connect tracker unsteady position is what we're looking for here. And let's just create a paint stroke. Input, look through it, and say, hey, let's go and create our brush. Let's put a clone. We'll just kind of play with different options for it. Good. Go to modifier stroke, and we can see now our paint stroke, and we're gonna go to center. We're gonna go to center again, and connect to tracker unsteady position. But in that case, it jumps way over there. So let's go connect to position. And see now our paint stroke is attached directly to the tracker. It's kind of frustrating, but it is how it is. Tracking information or no track information. Make editable. I'll just move this guy out of the way. Oh. Grab this guy and put him back where he belongs. And there he goes. It'd been more useful if we actually tracked that feature, because it'd be already stuck onto it. But there's a little trade-offs, and it's not really a perfect system, but it will help you get your tracking information there and use track and assisted animation. One weird thing about it is there is an option to attach track information well before you do anything. And we're just going to go clone, and we go to stroke controls. These are controls for what we're going to create, and it's going to now bake into the modifier. And we see ability to, in the center, attach, let's see here, position. And now the animation is parented in there. And that would be perfect, you know, we're painting the offset of where it would be, but for some reason it doesn't like that, and it will modify the track to do this. A perfect world, I wouldn't want to do it, but that's what's going to happen. And when we do different modes, it just brings it even more farther away from where we would like it. So there is tracking for connecting tracking to Paint and Fusion. It's not perfect. If you need to rely on tracking, that's the way you go about it. I strongly believe in getting your animation skills up strong enough where you won't need tracking for beauty work, because it will go much more faster, and you won't be in a bind where you can't animate your way out of a situation where tracking is giving you automated results that you can't use and can't do anything about. So with that, that just about wraps up the class. And thank you for joining me for this short introduction of Beauty Work in Fusion. All right, I'm Nathaniel Westphere, and I'll see you next time. Hello and welcome to the second part of the class. This part of class, of the beauty class, just goes into the paint tool. And we're just going to cover a few more bases. We're going to look at a few shortcuts, more basically a deeper dive into the paint tool. Because who doesn't love a compositing program that gives you kick-ass paint controls? Which Fusion does. I love Nuke's paint. I came up on Combustion's paint. I think Combustion still needs to be beat as a paint tool, but Fusion's pretty great. Now, let's so we have our paint here. We've imported it. Now, what happens when we just want to just bring in a still, just because this is a fun little trick? Well, we hit shift when you drag something, and we'll take a look here, and all this is automatically set just to encapsulate one frame. Now Nuke just lets you create a node, hold that frame. And Fusion, in the documentation, they don't really, this is the way they tell you. Yeah, I know it's a little inconvenient versus other programs, but hey, it doesn't take more than a few seconds and it works. So you can see this frame's going down here, and this is already updated. Now let me talk a little bit more about this footage because I failed to do that so far. This is a time lapse that goes on to over 1,300 frames that has a napkin floating around it. Annoyingly, from dawn to dusk, this napkin's hanging around. No one's picking this thing up. I mean, people just walk by and they don't even care about it. So not only is it littering, this napkin is, begging for attention, and no one's giving it. But we're gonna give that napkin some attention. I know that was pretty terrible. So this is our still frame, and we're gonna hit Control and Space. We're gonna type in our paint. I love this. I fell in love with interfaces like that from Nuke. After Effects kind of like half-assed it. So all I'm doing is Alt, drag, input, drag it up into that. Double click to node to get the controls. Again, I was talking about After Effects. Yeah, I know there's not a whole lot to say. It does have a feature like that, but this Control Space, oh my god, I love this. So let's right click, and so let me just go through this interface so you can customize this. You want small, you want large, you want labels and text, you want text only. It's all here. And I kind of find this is I'm all for information density, but the icons, this is a little too much information dense. I mean, something a little bit more chunkier, something a little bit more easier to click. And hey, you're not stumbling around trying to figure out what things are, because those icons are extremely cryptic. So let's just go to the workhorse of this node. Let's hit the stroke key and let's take care of this guy. Now let's just, again, let's go into this, and if we want this, we want a stroke that goes onto all frames, and it defaults by that. If you want to paint a one frame, now, again, this is the present, this is the future, this is a phantom, this is what we're getting ready to create. So this is a phantom paint stroke. We want all frames. That's the default. We don't have to look at it. But just so you know, we're gonna hit. We're gonna grab this again. Oh, look at that. We're gonna hit our clone tools. We're gonna click Alt. And we're just going to paint this out just nicely. Now, I don't really like how that last paint stroke ended up. So, oh, and before we go into that, we can use the timeline down here, and we can see what we did. That's paint stroke 4. And we can select it, and you can see here, I select it here, I select it over here. Now this is useful because let's say you see a paint stroke that you're not really sure of, you have a ton of, maybe you have 100 paint strokes in here. You can go to the frame, you can see in a timeline view how it exists, you can select it, and it's selected up here. In fact, I like to have the timeline view open at the same time. Just have it kind of in there. This way I can kind of scrub this way. I don't have to reach down here. And that's easy if you have a pen tablet because you're more generally in this area than trying to grab something down here. At least how I feel about it. So we're going to go and we want to modify this. Now, there's modify tools that you can come in here. But make sure we grab it again. If we find some way to select this, and now we Alt and drag, let's turn off a proxy because we don't need to be more pixelated. I can just... And I don't like this icon. This icon really throws me off because it's not what we're doing. You can see I'm moving it. It's inverted. It's just inverted. I'm moving it left, it moves right. Wish that was different by default. In a transform node, this works amazingly. But let's see. We can say remove. We can modify. Remove all. We can say modify. Offset position. Now we get the little crosshair. Now is responding, left, right, up, down, and we can modify it. So we can come in here and say make sure this lines up real nicely, and there we go. And when I say the transform tool automatically does it. We can, let's see it real simply. Let's do a polygon effects mask. Ooh, dun, 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 dun. Modify. Smooth that out. Let's make them Bezier. Now we grab this and we hit Alt, and wow, look at that. And can you see the possibilities for doing beauty work and doing that at the same time? I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy useful. And we just, we can. And at the same time, we can grab points and we can Alt, we can drag, and we can animate just like this. I can grab a point. Alt drag, Alt drag, Alt drag, Alt drag. I could click on the transform tool, Alt drag. This is insane. I mean, the way that it's set up is just clearly thought out for cleanup. It is so easy to do. So we're back in the paint tool, and we have the pesky paint stroke there. Come on. Go to modify, offset stroke. We hit Alt and drag. Now you see how I did that? I grabbed this and then I modify the value, and there it goes. Now we have people walking over this, and I'm like, come on, I just painted this up, and now you're gonna walk over it? And they say, yeah, I am. So how do we reveal people back over? I mean, we don't want to create a merge node to get this guy's backpack there. I mean, what's going on here? And there is a paint. There is a paint option in here that we're going to explore. So let's click this. We create a new paint up to. Let's hit F2. Say reveal paint. And there is a source tool option here. Now we can't click it. We can't do anything with it. As a user interface discoverability point, this is a terrible design. Once you know how to do it, it's great. So what this wants is a node. So we say, well, I'm going to grab this. And it's going to tell you, no, I'm not going to do anything for it. But say we rename it plate. We hit F2. We copy the name. Paste in here. We hit enter. And now it says, hey, welcome to the party. Well, what can I do for you? And without moving the clone center, now we're taking the source and we're inputting. Now, we don't want it to last on forever. We just want one frame. So here we go. We're just painting out one frame. And hopefully, reveal paint, go down here, and here we go. There's our frame right there, 88. We just created a paint stroke on 88. That's crazy useful. There's also the possibility to reveal something in the future. So let's talk about painting in the future. And that sounds pretty cool, right? Let's paint in the future. Let's make a paint node. Let's hit F2. There's a part of me that doesn't let me type without underscores. I mean, it just wants to. All right, so we can reveal and paint, but what happens when we do this? Especially when we don't look. Okay, we made a ton of things. We're not really painting into the. I haven't really set the thing, but we're not really. We're offsetting it, but this guy doesn't even exist on the next frame, let alone 7 frames. So we know we're not painting into the future. Let's come here. Let's make sure we're actually on stroke. We can. So let's just take the same thing here. Plate. Let's paste it into the source tool. Now we're talking. We get the green little thing here. Let's try to have this, and we can see right now when we hit overlay, we're painting in a future frame, and we can just reveal back where something's going to be. Now the center without moving or modifying is 0.5. So it's 0.5, and you see I clicked and modified it. Usually this doesn't get activated unless you hit Alt. At least it doesn't feel like it. But when you have something active in here, you're all ready to go. I don't have to. Let's just create some fresh, ready to go. I don't have to say, hey, I'm going to use you and arm it like you might see. So that was time offset in that frame. Let's do it again. See, now this frame's a little bit of a different color. And we can, without having to worry about moving this, with this in, it lets you just start painting without having to move the center point and turning it into cloning. You're just revealing. And that's, that's just crazy useful. Okay, so that's gonna wrap up. That's gonna just wrap up this updated version 2 of the class. I hope you love the paint tool as much as I do. I'm Nathaniel Westphere. Just so you know that again. You can always find me online at nathanfx.com. And until next time, I'll see you later.